Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the unversedpodcast. Danny here, and today I am talking about Tenjou Tenge. Now, the reason I was reading this manga was because I was watching Wooly Versus, right? Wooly from Super Best Friends, and he had a video of the anime opening of Tenjou Tenge, and like when I clicked play, like, oh, let's see, what kind of shit posting he's doing right now, right, as he calls it. And to see him do this, right, like as soon as that song, I heard it click, I was like, oh my god, I know exactly what this is. I used to watch this like a long ass time ago, and I kind of found out that there was a manga to it, so I was like, you know what, I need to read this. And I don't remember what it was about, right? I just remember the intro song, and seeing it, I was thinking, yeah, it's some kind of delinquent manga, and that's how it started out. Now, I'm going to say right now, I don't recommend this manga to anyone. But I will say this, though. It kind of shows everything that a shonen manga does. Right, like every arc you can think of in a generic shonen manga, it's in here. But at the same time, the flaws of every generic shonen manga is in here at the same time. And my god, is it just a mess. It's just a huge roller coaster. Man, like, oh my god, like where do we even begin? Like this, it started off simple, right? And at first, you're not really clear who the main character was, at least for me, right? Because I'm thinking, oh, it's this guy. Turns out, no, it's this other guy, right? Based on the hair. And Soichiro, I believe his name is. I forget. Anyways, it already starts off on a mess. And then we see a lot going on here, right? There's a lot more to it, right? I mean, action school mangas, I would have rather just had that than whatever the hell we got, this 1,000-year war and stuff. Like it got into the realm of powers way too quick, and the pacing is out of place, right? It kind of tries to step away from the classic shonen where it's just like, let's just skip the bullshit and go straight to the fight, but it failed horribly in that aspect. Like, it was ridiculous. I don't really have seen such a mess in any manga, I don't believe, in a long time, if at all. This is probably like the worst manga I've ever read, I think, which kind of sucks because the art is amazing. And that's another thing too, is the art's really good. Right, like when I first read it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is clearly like 90s manga, And then all of a sudden, boom, instant transition into a completely different art style, which takes up like 2/3 of the manga. And I'm thinking, well, where the hell did this come from? Right, it didn't even look like this at first. And I mean, sure, the art's fine. It looks great, good spreads and cover pages, but that's not enough to save this plot. Right, it goes into this whole mystic element, right? Like, oh, these guys have power with their ki, and it's like there's more to what's going on, and then we get an excessively long flashback, which in itself could have been its own manga, right? It could have been like Tenjou Tenge 0, explaining all this stuff. Right, like most mangas, they have a 0 series which explains certain characters or backstories, and then that manga gets referenced in the mainline manga. But here they're like, no, let's just have too many chapters of flashbacks involving Tenjou Tenge, and yeah, that'll be fine, right? No, man, like when I was reading it, I was thinking like, man, like what even is happening in present day right now? And like we get a little flashes of the main characters because the way the flashback works is that they're watching the flashback through memories or whatever, and you know, when we see them every 5 chapters, I'm thinking, oh, they're trying to keep us to remember that, oh yeah, hey guys, remember, these are the characters. It's like, really? Like, a manga shouldn't have to do that. And it just lasted way too long, and it was overly complicated with what was going on. And when we came back to the present, some things happened that the mangaka did not show us, right? Because all of a sudden the main character, if he's still the main character at this point, Soichiro-sama, or whatever his name is, right, he loses an eye and he cut his hair, and I was just like, what? When did this happen? Like, I know she saw flashes of the future of it happening, but that was it. Like, we never saw the actual conflict happen with the main character. We just saw Aya-chan just see it in her dragon eyes, or whatever the hell they're called. And it's like, what's even going on? And then so, you know, we get all this buildup, right? This exponential buildup from just normal people fighting to these guys have weapons and powers and kids are dying and stuff, right? It's really high up there on scale compared to what we got in the beginning. And then after that arc, he brought it back down into like, well, guys, we still have that school tournament we have to do, so let's get to it, shall we? What? Like, wait, we just saw this whole exposition about why we have this 1,000-year war going on and why it's not going to end and why we need to stop it. And now you're going to tell me that that's not important right now for this next arc? And then when the next arc happens, it's like everything's kind of fine, and then here comes some characters trying to raise it back up on the scale to more mystical fights and stuff, and it just made me think. I'm like, man, like the pacing's all wrong, just everything is so wrong about this manga, with characterization and even the training montages and certain interactions with main characters that it just doesn't make sense, and even at the end of the day, like, still, reading all the chapters, I was still like confused in a sense of how certain things played out, and it's just crazy. And there's characters who, because we got like 2 major flashbacks, right? We got the one which again is another story, right? 2 years prior to this manga, explaining why these characters are involved, and that goes on for a good while too, and in a sense where like that could just be another Zero manga, and we get certain explanations in there, and then when we see that character from the flashback show up, he's still fine, like his, in the flashbacks it was saying like, oh yeah, he's dying, but he's fine right now. Like, what's going on? I mean, aside from the end, like what's really going on? For plot convenience or the fact that the mangaka forgot, and this was in Ultra Jump, right? This manga is in Ultra Jump. That's the same manga magazine that has JoJolion, right? At the time, it was Steel Ball Run. But you have to think, like, first of all, it's Shonen Jump, and it's a magazine that has Steel Ball Run. Like, how did it last as long as it did? I mean, sure, it was only, 136 chapters? But still, that's a lot of chapters and a lot of meetings thinking, yeah, I think it'll be fine. I mean, the time frame, that's like, 3 years it was out, so not that many. I mean, that's like 12 meetings or so, right? Give or take, and as far as I know from Bakuman. But anyways, like, how could they see this manga and think, yeah, no, this is pretty good, let's keep it going? I mean, again, like the only real good thing about this manga was the art. It was really nice. And it did have its ecchi moments and its non-ecchi moments, based on the art and the situation going on, right? That's pretty much all it has going for it. I mean, there were some interesting characters, and you know what? Like, they didn't get enough screen time. And they are main characters, right? Like it's just weird ass transitions, bad pacing. Like even the ending didn't make any sense, right? So the whole thing is like, oh, this guy Soichiro, he has, he's basically the reincarnation of, the villain from thousands of years ago, and like they're struggling to who's gonna take over the body, and like they have all this immense power, like to rival God and all this stuff, and then he tells his senpai, who I initially thought was the main character, was just like, he tells him, he's like, I'll be back and we're gonna finish this fight, kind of thing. And it's like, what? Like, what's going on? And all of a sudden this guy became super important, and it's just, I don't know. And plus there's some humor in here too, which feels out of place. It's mainly in the first half of the manga, with the Soichiro and his best friend Bob, but they have like bad timing for humor, and it's all just confusing, I think. At first I was thinking like, man, I wonder if the anime is a lot better than this. I didn't bother to check, but I think I might eventually check just to see what people think, because it's just one of these mangas. Like, I've read a lot of manga, guys. I've read a lot. I'm nearing like 200 overall on my list, but still, like, I don't really remember pretty much anything that was as chaotic as this was. On all my years of reading, I never saw something as this. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I mean, it's I have to give it credit for trying to take shortcuts, right? Because it does have the Shonen Jump formula, right? A shonen formula, and the mangaka somehow decided, like, let's cut most of this out, and let's keep the good stuff going. And I think that's really was his aim, but it wasn't executed properly. It needed a lot more refining, and that's another thing I'm thinking, is just like, for such a mess, how did the editors think, like, reading this, like, no, yeah, this makes sense, it makes perfect sense, let's just keep it like this. Like, what? Oh yeah, I forgot, this was a monthly manga, so this went on for quite a while. 97 to 2010. Wow, 13 years, this manga. And it's kind of crazy. I will give him credit, though. I think the reason why he changed the art style so drastically was because it was the end of the 90s. It's time to really change up the art, right? You can't keep it at the 90s delinquent looking as it should be. That's what I think, anyways. It has to be, right? That's the only thing I can think of that makes sense. So yeah, overall, I mean, this was definitely an experience. The reason it took so long for me to finish it was because I didn't want to read it. There were certain points where I was like, oh God, I'm done, right? Like, I need a break. Let me read something good. Let me catch up on my backlog for this, because I just can't deal with this mess. So yeah, and I was in the final like 30 chapters, and I'm like, I'm just gonna sit down and I'm just gonna read all of this, right? I am just gonna face the music and just finish this goddamn thing. So I did, and yeah, I mean, all I have to say really is just don't read it. I wouldn't even say give it the maybe, like, because I would say maybe give it the first arc, but that's not really not going to help with the overall manga. Because really it was just, Soichiro and Bob are just at this high school trying to fight the strongest people, and then it goes into this, literally people are wearing like ridiculous looking, like this guy. There's this guy who's blind who uses fragrance as a weapon, right? He infuses his ki in it, and like it chains links to this needle, and that's how he attacks, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, acupuncture needles as a weapon, that's pretty cool. Plus he's blind and he uses smells. That's pretty interesting of a character, right? And then all of a sudden, right, by accumulating the fragrance and the dust around him, he's able to create armor and ridiculous looking weapons. And it's just like, wait, whoa, what's happening right now? And then one of the main characters, Aya, she gets her hair and infuses ki into it to create a sword, right? And not just any sword, but the holy sword that's been around since the beginning of this war. And I'm thinking, what? Where's the context for this? What is this ridiculousness? And then somebody, like, I will admit, again, there's a lot of interesting characters in this. There's a guy who is the son of a master of staffs, right? He's a staff user, but he uses technology to surpass his limits by giving him 8 robotic arms, and each finger has a connector to it that transmits his his thoughts and reactions to 8 individual staffs. So he is ridiculous in that aspect, and that's really cool, And then he ends up winding up just driving around majority of the time after his fight, which kind of sucks, And there's other characters that are kind of cool. There's this one of the main characters' brother just looks straight up like Dio, and he's the character from the flashbacks who is supposed to be dead, but he's still kicking. And we have the generic guy who doesn't want to fight, but he's like one of the strongest people out there. And man, when those two characters had a fight, that was, Dio and this super strong guy, that was really intense. But again, it just gets ridiculous to the fact, like what is the limits here that we have? Are we killing people? Or are we not killing people? Because it's on and off. And it's it's not ever really clear about what this manga is. I mean, for me, anyways, there's better stuff out there to read where you could get the same exact stuff. Honestly, it's like Yu Yu Hakusho, I could say, is a way better version of this. It has similarities and stuff where it starts normal and then it goes into the sci-fi, ghost and stuff realm, the shonen stuff. Like even Beelzebub, I think is a better comparison. Beelzebub is way better, and it brings out similar tropes, So at the end of the day, Tenjou Tenge is a manga I will probably remember for a while, and only bring it up when mainly for complaining or pointing out flaws in manga and using that as a reference. But honestly, I don't really see myself grabbing any volumes for this. I don't see myself trying to watch it, because if it's the same, it's just a waste of time. And that's really all I have to say right now about Tenjou Tenge. I mean, I got a lot of cool screenshots out of it, but there's nothing memorable about it, right? Way too much exposition too. Like, I know there's those exposition flashbacks I talked about, but even like during fights and stuff, there's a lot of exposition, and it's like that's half of it's not necessarily needed, right? It's not required. It's just a big old distraction again, So it's whew, man. So the next thing I'm reading should be Yozakura Quartet. I think I pronounced that right. So hopefully this is a refresher. And, to quote, what's his name from Wanted, right? The best assassin in the world. He's like, sometimes you got to roll around in filth to appreciate the good things. Of course, he was talking about something completely different, but the idea still stands. Sometimes you just got to read a shitty manga to appreciate the good ones you're reading now, yeah. So, I would say definitely look at the art though. look up Tenjou Tenge and then just look up the color spreads, the chapter covers, pretty much, yeah, like, because it's really good art. I'm tempted to see if this mangaka has done anything else, so that way I could, maybe read something better. But again, that's my worry, is that it's the plot. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll add it to a list if he's done any other manga. So again, guys, that's all I have to say about this interesting manga, to say the least. Thank you for listening. I know it's a long episode this time. So yeah, I'm actually taking a break. I don't know when I'll be reading Yozakura Quartet. Should be sometime next week, because at the time of this recording, this coming weekend is Anime Expo. And if you've been listening to the podcast, we've been saying, like, we're going to be there. I'll be cosplaying probably all 4 days. It might be there even day 0. It might even cosplay day 0. So yeah, we'll be out there passing out cards, recording. I'll begin, grabbing some interviews for the episode, and just, having a good time with everybody. And, if you guys see us, come by, say hi, give a shout out. It's always great to see people. And yeah, so we'll be there. Be sure to check out the social medias, as I'll be posting there on all 4 days, and that's at unversedpodcast anywhere you go. And remember, you can always email us at unversedpodcast@gmail.com for questions, comments, concerns. Let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if you've read Tenjou Tenge and you've enjoyed it, and I want to see your points on the matter, because it was successful enough to stay alive for 13 years. So I kind of, if anybody out there can defend it, I want to see your reasoning on why it's good, because I think that would be some interesting material to look at. So thanks, guys, as always, and remember, we will talk to you next time.
Cha-ra-ra-ra, 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 chan cha-ra-ra-ra, chan cha-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra, chan chan. ジャックが仲間になった。